Alright, this is going to be part 2 of the Governor tuning and kind of what my results were. So, what I talked about in the other video was kind of what the springs do and what these weights do. And I'm going to go over that again and kind of tell you what my results were. So, I went ahead and put a lighter spring in and a heavier spring in. And what that did was change my part throttle shift. It really didn't change my wide open shifting at all that I noticed. But actually, when I did that, it was a little bit too high for part throttle. So I took it back out and ended up being with still a heavier spring on one side, but a little bit heavier yet to lower the part throttle RPM. And it's going to be a little bit of playing around. You can see I've got a bunch of variations of springs here. So I just wrote notes. You can kind of see a bunch of notes there of what springs I took out, what springs I put in, and I just went with a little bit stiffer spring. So I went from, well, I'll show you guys. I went from a spring like this, which is super light, to a spring like this, just in one side. So I was just changing one spring at a time. You can change them both at the same time, but that's going to make a big change all at once. So when I did that last change, that made my part throttles perfect. Like it shifts exactly where I want part throttle. And then to change your wide open throttle shifts, you grind down that inner weight right there or make it lighter. If you had lighter weights, you could just simply change that weight. But I ground the corners off of mine, and I showed that in the other video. And that actually raised it about 300 to 400 RPM higher than what it was. So I'm getting right around 5,800 on the 1-2 shift and right about 5,500, maybe 5,600 on the 2-3 shift. So that's about perfect for me in my application wide open. I'm going to leave it there. I can always go back and adjust it later, but it's as good as I think I'm going to get it. And I'm super happy with the part throttle around town. I wish I could get the wide open throttle just a touch higher, but I'll kind of continue to drive it and see how that does. And I just want to get a little bit more data off of it before I go ahead and raise it anymore because it's so close to where I want it. So that was my results. Grinding these weights or making these weights lighter definitely made it shift later wide open. These inner springs here really just seem to change part throttle. That was the only effect I had, so, or it had on mine. So I also went ahead on a 700R4 this weekend. It's actually my dad's car. And we messed with the Governor on his as well, kind of did the exact same things in a different way. His was shifting way too late, just part throttle around town, and then wide open throttle, it was shifting at like 5,200 out of the 1-2 shift, and then the 2-3 shift was like 5,000. So just too early for his application wide open and too late part throttle. So we removed his, and I put a heavier spring in. And the actual Governors look about the exact same, to be honest. They are different, but they look really similar. So we put a heavier spring in here to make the part throttle shift earlier, and that worked out perfect, but we did have to change it twice to get the spring that we wanted. So we started with a little bit heavier and then went to the next heavier, and that ended up being perfect. Then on the outer weights of his actually had a weight just like this, but it actually had a factory like spot welded weight additional to it to make it even heavier. So what I did was ground off the spot welds to remove that factory weight, and then I just notched the corners of his. Now it was kind of an educated guess to what I've done to mine, but it happened to work out perfect. Is now his 1-2 shifts about 58 to 5,900 wide open. His 2-3 shifts right at 6,000 wide open. Exactly where we were going for. And yet, with changing those springs, his part throttle around town is a lot earlier than what it was. It's shifting at like 2,400 RPM, anywhere between 2,400 and 3,000 RPM, depending on how much load's on it or how much throttle you're giving it, part throttle. So he's super happy, and I just wanted to give you guys kind of the information that I found and some feedback on this. but it definitely works just like what we thought. And yeah, so hopefully this helps you guys. It's definitely a bit of playing around, but it's kind of awesome to get the results that you're hoping for. And I hope this helps some people. I've seen a lot of unclear information on these, and I just want to say again, it's these inner weights in here that change wide open throttle. You want to lighten those up for later shifts and make them heavier for earlier shifts. And then the springs really just seems to be part throttle. I noticed no difference with the springs on wide open throttle. So make the springs heavier for earlier shifts, lighter for later shifts. All right, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks.